There are many people who say that once I have enough financial security, I'm going to learn. It has to be the other way around. That which you chase runs away from you. If you chase money, it will run from you. You have to be careful what you want in life. I have seen people who all they want in life is money, and they get it, but it comes at a cost. Numerous cases where people have tried for decades. Once they give up, once they go into acceptance, once they surrender to their situation, everything changes and the bracha comes down. I was in university for 5 years. I was in Newcastle upon Tyne. I chose that university because it was a place that has a good social scene, nightlife. I spent 5 years there. Those whole 5 years I was in Newcastle upon Tyne, I had no idea that 10 minutes down the road was an establishment called Gateshead Yeshiva.
If I were to Google you, Charles, or to try and find any digital footprint of yourself online, very little shows up. Yet I know that sitting opposite me is someone who works hard, who keeps his head down, and makes every effort to ensure that any step you take along your personal journey, your spiritual journey, your business journey, is very much in line with the will of God and with a strong focus on achieving your personal goals. Can you paint a picture for us of the environment in which you grew up and perhaps some of the earlier influences that led you along this path?
Firstly, the reason why I don't have such a large digital footprint is that I grew up in an environment where in my school there wasn't a single computer. So I'm a little bit of a dinosaur from that perspective. I didn't grow up in and around technology, so I'm a bit of a technophobe. I'm the last one to get the latest gadgets. That's even, you could say that I do have the latest gadgets. So that's probably why I'm not on social media. I don't find it helpful. It's not something that I take fancy to. So early life, I grew up in Prestwich till I was 12 years old. And then my parents moved to Whitefield. I went to a non-Jewish private school. I then went on to Bury Grammar. My parents moved to Whitefield, as I said, when I was 12. Stayed there till I was 18, 19. Moved on to university. I went to Newcastle upon Tyne. I was there for 5 years. And after university, I went to London. Tried my hand in the big smoke, looking for fame and fortune. None of those things happened. Lasted about 9 months. Came back to Manchester. Home sweet home, place where I feel the most comfortable.
You were still single at that point?
Yeah, I was single.
Right.
Looking for work, ended up working in the computer industry. A friend of mine got me a job.
I just want to understand a bit more about that childhood. You were in public school as a child. Was there a cheder experience? Was there any Jewish education experience? Take me back to that part of your life as well.
Okay. So there was cheder. I was a Balkan boy, for anybody out there who remembers Rebbe Balkan.
That's a moment in history.
It is. I was one of the last wave of his Talmidim. That was in the late 80s. And I went there with a friend of mine, just the two of us. There were other boys there, but I didn't really know the other boys. Going to the schools that I went to, I wasn't really exposed to much of the Jewish community. I went to the school I went to, the primary school I went to was very small. Years 5 and 6 were in the same classroom, taught by one teacher delivering the syllabus to years 5 and 6. Years 3 and 4 were in the same classroom. There was probably like 10 people in my year, of which out of those 10 people in my year, there was maybe 2 or 3 that were Jewish. My parents sent me to Rebbe Balkan to get a Jewish education. I lasted there for a few years. I didn't enjoy the experience. It was mainly because the other Jewish guys that I knew that were my age, they were going to other cheders where they got to play football and they were singing songs. This was quite a rigid and I don't want to say anything. I don't want to come across anything negative about Rebbe Balkan, Chas v'Shalom, because obviously he was a great man, but from a different generation, and I found it difficult to connect to him. It was a lot of just translation, dikduk, and eventually I managed to convince my parents to let me go to a different cheder. Ended up on a Sunday morning cheder at Shrubberies, which was a much more fun environment. So that was really my Jewish education. And
so those chedorim were built to supplement children who were in the public school infrastructure, or were the children there full time in that cheder? What was the infrastructure for that built? What was it built for?
So a lot of the guys that went there, I can't really tell you their backgrounds. I mean, I think it was to supplement anyone's Jewish education. I think I was probably the most secular person there. There were people who came from Shomer Shabbos homes that were there at the same time that I was there. So it wasn't for people necessarily with my background.
Right.
I think though historically, the people who I've been exposed to through Holy Law or Whitehall Shul, they were a lot of them were Balkan boys. So I think a lot of the secular community seem to have gone through Balkan's Cheder.
If you're okay to share this, what did your parents want you to achieve there? How did it synchronize with what you were living, the standards you had at home? What was that like, and why did your parents put you in that Cheder? What were they trying to achieve? And I'm just really curious to understand.
They're no longer with us, so
right.
I can't speak on their behalf.
Right.
I can only assume that other people around me, 90% of my peers went to Jewish primary school. I think that because I don't want to use the word deprived me of, but they didn't give me any Jewish education. So therefore, we grew up in and around the Jewish community. I was in Prestwich at the time. I lived on Bishop's Road. There were many Jews around me. So I think they felt that they had to give me some kind of Jewish education. If it wasn't going to be through King David or Bury in Whitefield or other schools, that I should have some kind of Jewish education.
And then you had to sort of marry that back up with the lifestyle you were living at home. And I'm sure you were learning things that were different to how that looked.
No, because Rebbe Balkan it was all about translation. It was almost like a Hebrew class in Israel as a language, and there wasn't any hashkaf. Not that right. I saw a holy man sat at his table, but I didn't really see anything other than a teacher that was teaching, Hebrew words and the English equivalent.
Do you think, just reflecting back, that may have been like intentional, just like laying the foundations of Hebrew scripts, and then what can follow afterwards years later at your own pace would just be built on those foundations?
What do I think that's hashgacha pratis? Is that what you're asking me?
I'm just wondering he knew who was sitting in front of him. He knew the background you had and the lack of other Jewish education that you had, and perhaps still felt that, let's just get the basics done. And then, the other stuff that can build around that later on. I'm just...
I'm laughing just because when you say he knew who he had in front of him. And whenever my mother, may she rest in peace, used to drop me off, he used to question her. Like, he used to question, who's your mother? Who was your grandmother? He was very concerned about my... Jewish lineage. Wow. So I'm not sure how much he knew he had in front of him. But
so later on, you came back to Manchester, and you got your first job.
So in Manchester, the first job I took on was working in the computer industry. Business was focused on buying and selling computer hardware. I started off in sales, and then there was an opening that came up in purchasing, and I worked then for a number of years in the purchasing department.
Did you launch something in that space yourself after that? What was the next step?
The next step was I was there for, it was about 5 years, and then I was approached by some of my suppliers that were based in Israel. They asked me if I would like to start a new enterprise here in the UK, and they would be able to supply the product with a view to myself distributing it in Europe. In the UK and Europe. So that was the beginning of my solo career, I suppose.
Right.
I mean, not really solo. I had business partners, but as opposed to being
right.
I was no longer an employee.
Right.
I was somebody that was a partner in their own business.
Right. I'd love to hear more about that, because we sat down a couple of years ago to discuss a project, and I was working from home, and you came to my house and we met and discussed the work that we needed to discuss. And you looked around the room and you said, I started off in a similar sort of space to this, doing pretty significant numbers in that space with the computers buying and selling. Mm-hmm. Give us a bit of an insight into that infrastructure that you had set up for yourself at that time, and what you were able to, how far you were able to reach despite the seemingly small infrastructure behind you.
So there wasn't really very much infrastructure. There was a bedroom, and there was me, myself, and I, really. Yeah, I worked from home. I eventually did an extension on the house, did a small office upstairs, From there, I ran an import-export business. I never had any staff. There was a small tkufa, a period of time where my brother-in-law came to work with me, but it was a very short period of time. But outside of that, I never had any staff. I did all the elements of the process myself. I did have some help with the sourcing side of things from the guys in Israel, but really they were there. It was quite bad timing. And as far as the business that we were in was known as the grey market, importing and export. So we were bringing branded products from around the globe that was not condoned by the manufacturers. So, for example, we would bring Hewlett-Packard servers from Asia. At the time, there was a huge case that set precedent with Levi's. That Levi's, I think it was against Tesco supermarkets. Tesco was selling Levi's from around the world, and they were buying them for cheaper than they could buy them in the UK. They lost the case and were no longer allowed to bring in, I think it's also known as parallel importing. So when I was working in the industry, working for the company that I worked for, everything was going well. We were buying from around the world. I then decided to join these guys in Israel. Now, to put things in perspective, the population of Israel was probably around fairly small. Right. I think the population of France maybe 60, 70 million. And we were buying products from Israel, specialist products, server products that supposedly were supplying the domestic Israeli market. And Israel was grey marketing it out of Israel to other countries. And let's say there was a product that we bought from them that in France, with the population of 60 million, they were selling 1,000 of these a year. Israel was selling 10,000. So if you do the maths, the population 6 times the number of Israel in France, and yet Israel was selling 10 times the volume. It didn't work out. They knew something wasn't right, and they were onto the grey market. They knew where the hotspots were. Israel was a major hotspot for grey marketing, and just at the time that I left to go on my own, Israel got investigated, and they were shut down, and a lot of my supply chain diminished. So that left me pretty much on my own with regards to so plan A went out the window. It was right. Plan B. I'd burnt my bridges with the company that I was working for, so I was pretty much on my own. So from there, I was doing all the processes. So I was sourcing products, selling products. I was arranging the finance. I was chasing the invoices. I was bringing containers from around the world of computer products. I would go to the warehouse, unpack the container on my own single-handedly. There would, however many pallets were on the 40-foot container, I would, on my own, like I say, unpack them, bring them into the warehouse, load them onto the racking, and then I would then start to pick and pack all my orders single-handedly. Everything was pre-sold because the time process was that I would place an order, it would go onto a container, onto a boat, and then in that time, I would sell everything before it arrived.
I was wondering, the volume here, like the risk as a one-man band, to me sounds like, gosh, you're leaving yourself exposed over there. But you're saying you were confident that sales would be completed before they actually hit the shores.
Yeah, the product sold itself. I wasn't creating demand from the product. There was the
right.
Demand would outstrip supply. It was more difficult to obtain the products than it was to sell it.
Got you.
So from that perspective, whatever I ordered was sold before it arrived. But as far as infrastructure is concerned, like I say, I just focused on I suppose, doing what I had to do and outsourcing everything that I could. So the warehousing, I didn't have a warehouse. I just rented some space. I paid, per pallet per week. That meant when I had no stock, because once there was a delivery and I'd shipped everything out, then the process would begin again.
Right.
And the reason why there were bottlenecks was because it was so hard for me to source the products. I'd lost all my suppliers in Israel, so there was difficulty in sourcing. So accounts were done by my accountant, and the logistics. I just rented the space per pallet per week. and everything was done from my bedroom.
Fascinating. What drove you to keep that mindset of saying, let's keep this operation very tight and still focus on the output? Because I'm sure you were exposed and socializing with other business owners who were focused on growing, on scaling, on building teams, on really expanding their footprint, and then with the hope to scale their output thereafter. But it seems like you had this vision from very early on that I can just keep my head down and stay very focused on what needs to be done, do as much as I can myself, let that compound over time, and let the results speak for themselves.
That was plan A. Plan A was to create, a large business. That, the world is my oyster. The sky's the limit. Those are the
catchphrases.
Those are the catchphrases. Yeah, I didn't believe that I had any limitations. I was confident, and that didn't work out. Plan B was thrust upon me. I dealt with what was put in front of me. I wasn't strategic. It was a case of every day was scratching my head. And what am I going to do here? How am I going to get back on track to Plan A? And Plan A never materialized. I just basically ground it out.
Right.
I suppose I'm a grinder.
Right.
That's the way I've operated from an early age.
But you've carried through with that long term as well.
Yeah. That it kind of fits in with my personality. There were times in my misspent youth where we used to play a lot of poker.
Hey, we didn't speak about this yet. We've got to rewind now.
There's a few rewinds.
Yeah.
The truth is, my entrepreneurial flair started when I was 17. I passed my driving test, and I needed to figure out how I was going to put fuel in the car, pay the insurance, because my parents kind of, they were, I think we'll touch on this a little bit more further in, because I think this can be unraveled a little bit more. But just going back to the 17, I decided I had a number of friends who worked in family businesses that were in the import-export wholesale distribution arena, and I would go to them and buy some stock when 17 years old. Not much, probably would spend a couple of £100 on. I used to buy their samples, and I would do car boot sales on a Sunday morning. So I had friends that were working in Woolworths on a weekend or in the evenings as their to supplement their income, and I chose to go and just find some schoira to sell on the car boot sales. And that was really the beginning of my
your wheeling and dealing.
Wheeling and dealing, yes.
Wow.
And I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit. I think that even when I went to university, I never felt I was going to. I mean, I did a degree in business systems and information technology. It was quite nondescript. It was not. I wasn't coming out with any kind of. I wasn't a doctor, dentist.
Right.
I didn't know where it was going to take me, but I always felt that I would end up in business.
So those years, I know we're jumping a bit, but I'm going to just touch on that. Those years when you were sort of hanging around with friends, it was before your university days. You mentioned to me that you house shared for a while. Mm-hmm. At what stage was that? House
sharing post-university was...
Post-university,
So I went to live in London. I was there for 9 months. I worked in recruitment. Didn't last long. It was actually 9/11. I was working for a company that specialised in IT recruitment for the investment banking industry. Investment banking put a freeze on employment. The company I worked for reduced their staff by over 50%.
Wow.
I was last one in, first one out. Unemployed, came back to Manchester, went to live with my parents. I think I was about 22 at the time. Bear in mind, I hadn't lived at home for probably, over 5 years, and having to conform to parents' rules and being treated like the 17-year-old, 16-year-old teenager that was before I left was very difficult for me. So I went to live with friends. It was a bachelor house.
Right.
I don't know if I can mention any names, but it was good times.
Those years of sitting in that bedroom, or then the extension of the house, but staying very focused. Like you mentioned in the introduction, you joined the workforce before social media was a thing, before you were exposed constantly to what everyone else was doing. What were some of the common distractions faced then, if any? And what do you find some of the factors that you're seeing now on the ground of what our younger generation are exposed to that may be causing them to fail on that journey of accomplishing what they want to accomplish because of the distractions of they're being faced?
So with regards to distractions in those days, I don't remember being distracted. I was married, children. I had to put bread on the table. I was also nouveau frum, which meant I was trying to carry out my Yiddishkeit with a fervor, with a bren, so Yiddishkeit was new and exciting. So, in between waking up early in the morning for shul, taking kids to school, dealing with babies and putting food on the table, going to shirim, I didn't have time to be distracted. I had responsibilities with regards to Yiddishkeit and with regards to looking after my family. So I wasn't distracted.
And seeing what you see now, I mean, for somebody who was able to live in those years without those distractions and just see
Well, I see my own experience with being distracted has come. I joined LinkedIn. I tried it for a year or two. I was looking for business opportunities, specifically in the property arena. I thought there might be guys out there with opportunities that might show themselves on LinkedIn. And I didn't find a single opportunity in the time that was in LinkedIn. And I found myself being distracted, looking at people's feeds. And it could literally go from, I've got a 5-minute window, let's have a look what's going on LinkedIn, to an hour, over an hour being taken out of my day looking at feed after feed, and of which none of it was helpful or constructive. And I realized what was going on, and I deleted the app from my phone.
Wow.
And because it just wasn't helpful. Yeah. One thing I would say about my personality, which has been helpful, is that I don't know what the opposite of addictive is, but I have a very...
Averse.
I don't have an addictive personality.
Right.
I can pick something up and put it down very, very easily. It's not something that I've had to work on. It's just a minute that I've been blessed with. In my misspent youth, I tried smoking at an early age, 11, 12 years old. We found a packet of cigarettes, my friends and I won't say where I found it, but found the packet of cigarettes and tried smoking. It lasted until I was about 16. Once it was my 16th birthday and I was legally old enough in those days to go and buy a packet of cigarettes, there was no more excitement. I quit smoking there and then. I picked up a cigarette here and there socially, but literally as a habit, the excitement went, I dropped the cigarettes. And that's for me, it's been a bracha to be, and so I don't have an addictive personality. So for me to stop LinkedIn, delete it, I've not looked back.
But of that moment of recognition that this is getting me more out of me than I'm getting out of it. Like you went in there with 5 minutes in mind, and you realized it got an hour out of me.
Yeah.
And I had no intention of spending that hour. Yeah. I need to redirect where
it was an hour that I couldn't afford.
Right. They say that behind every one of these apps is that you're trying to switch off and get out of is 1,000 engineers somewhere in Silicon Valley working against you to keep you there. Meaning
makes sense.
It's a massive challenge. It's a massive challenge. So you grew up without it, you tasted it, so to speak, and very quickly dropped it and said, I'm not going to get to where I need to get to if I let myself sink into this lifestyle.
I wasn't that forward thinking. It wasn't a case of I wasn't getting where I need to. I've got bills to pay. Simple. I've got a mortgage to pay. I've got school fees to pay. And this is stopping me from doing that.
It's very powerful.
So, with regards to the youth of today that have grown up with social media, from an early age, I'm sorry for them because they obviously don't know life without it.
Very powerful. We can probably spend all day on that topic alone. There's just so much to unpack. But let's go back to your spiritual journey, bringing the spiritual into your life. Where did that start? I know you're an avid listener or follower of Gedalia Fenster, Talmud, you'd probably tell me. Talk to me about what you have been introduced to along this journey and perhaps some of the principles that Gedalia teaches and how they help you frame the way you go about your life.
So Gedalia is a relatively recent thing. It was actually my wife that introduced me to Gedalia Fenster. She's I'd just like to mention that she's the source of all my spiritual nourishment, constantly inspiring me with recommendations of what to listen to, and also her own Torah. The spiritual journey goes back to early 2000s. I was in the bachelor house, and one of the guys living in the bachelor house, his parents lived a few doors from the local youth rabbi. And when he would go home, the local youth rabbi would go to his house and he chapped him, hook, line and sinker. He was somebody that was driving around in the company BMW and had a good job, good salary. He was the owner of the house. So this bachelor house, it was his home. And we were myself and another guy, we were his tenants. And the three of us lived, we rented a bedroom each. And he was inspired by the youth rabbi. He saw the truth and he was pulled towards it. And he gave the keys back to his boss of his brand new company, BMW. He left everything and went to yeshiva.
Can you share who the rabbi was?
His name's Rabbi Aviv Bar-Ilan.
He was the youth rabbi?
No.
I'm sorry. Who was the youth rabbi?
The youth rabbi was a guy called Rabbi Daniel Epstein. He now lives in Ramat Beit Shemesh.
Right. And Rabbi Aviv was the owner of the house?
He was my landlord.
Wow.
And he was the one that... He was the initial inspiration. He was the one that brought into the bachelor home. He brought Daniel Epstein to the house. There was a weekly share, and that was the early days. Aviv encouraged me to go to Rabbi Hassan to his house, who was and still does work for Seed. We would learn things like Derech Hashem, Pirkei Avos. He also introduced me to Whitefield Kollel, where I met Rabbi Shmuel Tepper, who I still learn with to this day after 20-something years. We learn at least 6 days a week, in the summer, possibly even 7 days a week.
So just to clarify, sorry to interrupt you, but that means from your days in Balkan Cheder until Rabbi Aviv brought Torah back into the bachelor's house, did you have any exposure from Torah learning or Jewish lifestyle? No,
nothing. And I don't think I put... there was... When I was 14, 15 years old, every other Friday, the young Chabad Bochrim would come round the streets of Whitefield knocking on your door, asking you to put your tefillin on. Apart from that, I don't recollect any kind of Jewish spiritual input.
Wow.
I would go Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur to shul, but that was hanging out in the foyer, in the lobby, in and around the shul grounds. There was no davening at all, in those days.
Wow. I'm sitting here open mouthed because we daven in the same shul, and I see the fervor and the commitment that you have to tefillah, and I just think it's remarkable that what Raviv experienced and was willing to bring back into the house, and how that whole chain of events, get to take us back to that point and carry on from there.
So once again, as I said, I'm a grinder. I don't hit those kind of spiritual highs. I wasn't one of these guys that dropped everything like Rabbi Aviv. Slowly ground it out. Went to shir after shir. I was learning with Rabbonim. I still never took anything on for years. The first thing I took on was kashrus. I think from a spiritual perspective, we know that in the blood is the neshama. What we eat enters into the blood, and I think the concept is simsum alev. Is that the right?
I believe so.
Yeah. So the blockages, and when you're eating non-kosher meat, that doesn't allow for spirituality to enter the neshama, or makes it much more difficult. So that stopping eating non-kosher meat created an opening to allow, I suppose, more spirituality to enter in. Once I met my wife, we decided that was when we got married, we were going to keep Shabbos and other, I suppose, the pillars of Yiddishkeit. So Shabbos, Kashrus, Tahar Mishpacha, all the pillars. In a way that's, as a novice, we started from, just figuring it out slowly. So once we got married, that was when we kept Shabbos, first Shabbos.
Wow. Unbelievable turn of events from that build up.
It took a long, like I say, it took me years. It took me, to take that on. It was difficult. It was a difficult jump, giving up my previous lifestyle. But there's an expression, I think, slowly catch your monkey. I suppose I got there in the end.
Wow. Do you recall what were you resisting at the time? Was it just you wanted absolute clarity before committing? What was it you were after?
The resistance, I suppose, could only have been described as the Yetzer Hara. Because ultimately, living in a world devoid of any spirituality there's no depth or meaning. Just thinking now, I remember going to school, going to college, going to university. Every day was something new. Every day I was learning something new. It wasn't Judaism, Yiddishkeit, but I was learning something new, and that was always so. That newness was it kept you fresh. It was exciting. Every day in my life at that point there was something new to be learned, something new to be experienced. Once I left education, left university, and settled down in a job, every day became Groundhog Day. I would wake up, have my breakfast, go to work, come home, watch the TV, have my dinner, maybe a bit of socializing, go to bed, wake up, have my breakfast, go to work. And I felt down. I thought, is this it? Groundhog Day? Is this basically my life? It was like watching Coronation Street. Eat, sleep, work, repeat. Eat, sleep, work, repeat. That was tough. And that's what I think I even considered. I looked into going to learn a language. I was going to learn Spanish. I wanted to learn something. I needed that newness of learning something new. So that I suppose that helped to. So when the Shurim came along, oh great, I get to learn something new.
Back to learn.
So I was very open to Makabel to receive that, because I was just desperate to get back into learning and having that newness, that freshness, to give me something, to keep me feeling alive.
Wow. But then I suppose that patch of your life must have been extremely difficult, where you want to learn and you want to receive, like you're saying, new ideas, and you realize that life without this feels very void and empty. But then at the same time, committing back to that lifestyle of Yiddishkeit and giving up all those different things that you had been used to for so many years would come at a cost. And I suppose it's at that juncture that it's very conflicting point to be.
So along that journey, before I really took on a major lifestyle change of keeping Shabbos and committing to Torah mitzvahs, there was growth. So for example, I started to put on my tefillin again. I hadn't put them on. Okay, but there was a few times when I was a teenager with the Bochrim coming to the house, but I came because they came to my door, and it was kind of thrust upon me rather than me choosing to do it. I was told to put on my tefillin once a week would be a good idea. So I put on my tefillin once a week. Once I was comfortable at putting them on once a week, it was time to put them on twice a week. Now, like everybody else, last minute, it would come to Friday and I'd realise I hadn't put my tefillin on, and it was going to be Shabbos, and you couldn't put them on Shabbos. So yeah, it became like a bit of a Friday minhag. So once that I suppose they call it the Bechira points. Once I'd overcome that challenge of putting on my tefillin once a week, and it became just a part of the weekly routine, that's when I had to start battling with doing it a second time, and then eventually building up to putting them on 6 days a week. And from there, that was really my first real taste of spiritual growth, of battling with something and overcoming it, and taking that battle and winning the battle and moving on to the next challenge and working on that. And that process is something that obviously every good Jewish boy should be battling with.
Marriage for you, there was the clincher where you realized if we don't set the threshold now and you start a family, then there's probably a much lower chance of going back on yourself afterwards.
Marriage for me just gave me the strength to I suppose to do it with somebody else was made it easier.
It's very, very powerful. I appreciate you sharing that, going into that whole journey and part of your life. When we spoke initially about having this conversation, you told me after a bit of back and forth that you wanted to title this episode Get Rich or Get High Trying. And you suggested that you felt that would be an appropriate title for the episodes because besides the journey of trying to achieve success that many people are on, more importantly is the relationship that one can build with God along that journey of trying, regardless of the outcome. How would you define the journey on which each day waking up, going to work, what is it exactly that we are trying to achieve along this way? And from everything you've learned along your own journey, how do we measure success?
Well, the first thing that springs to mind is you mentioned the word outcome. And one thing I've learnt from listening to Gedalia is that we cannot be focused on the outcome. We have no control over the outcome. Motivation cannot come from being outcome orientated. So we can't think about what the outcome will be. That's the first thing that comes to mind. Measuring success on the basis that we have no control over the outcome, whether something is successful or not is divinely ordained. The only thing that we have control of is the ability to choose between doing the right thing or the wrong thing by choosing good or bad. That's the only thing that is within our ability to be success. That's the only arena where we can have success, because everything else comes from above. And so that means you overheard some juicy Lashon Hara. Do you choose to believe it, number one? And number two, do you then choose to share that Lashon Hara? That's the only thing that we can have, that we have any kind of control over, and that's the only place, therefore, we can decide, measure our success on choosing to do the right thing. And that one, doing the right thing, wrong thing isn't about whether or not I have a chocolate bar or a piece of fruit. It has to be in the arena of your Bechira point, the place where you're battling and struggling. Whether that battle is won or lost is really how you for me you can measure success, because just like it's like this. Once I got to the point where putting on tefillin once a week wasn't even a battle anymore, and I was battling with putting my tefillin on for the second time that week. That was where success was. If I put it on that week twice, that was success. If I only did it once, that was failure. That's how that's the only way I can measure success.
Fascinating. Plugging that into the journey that we're all on, trying to be successful, whatever we've been primed to believe success means. But through what you're saying, success is part of the journey. It's part of the struggle, and it's moving, not the goalpost, but moving the battlefield line one step further, even along that journey. So it's very much integral in the journey itself. If one isn't journeying or traveling or becoming a better person and making better choices, that's a failure. I'm trying to understand how the lessons that you learn from Gedalia, how we can plug that into, for the bulk of us listening to this conversation, we wake up in the morning, we're living in that space where you were many years ago, waking up, having breakfast, dropping the kids off at school, going to work, rinse, repeat. And we're trying to chase this thing called success. We're trying to be successful at what we do. I'm trying to crystallize based on the things that you've learned. Okay, how can we reshape that in our minds?
Okay, so there's something I like to speak about. If we're going to talk about success in business, as you call it, success, as opposed to my version of success, something he talks about is that we are, each and every one of us is a keli. A keli is a utensil that's designed to be, it's a receptacle. Its purpose is to receive. Its primary purpose is to receive and contain something. Now, the bigger the receptacle, the more that you can receive. So if you have a very small l'chaim glass, you can only take a shot. You get yourself a pint glass, you can have a pint. You get yourself a nice big jug, you can have a jug. That's the idea. We are all receptacles, and we're all able to receive shefa. Shefa starts in Shemayim and comes downwards. And we need to learn how to increase ourselves as a keli. He talks a lot about this. I can share, if you like, some things that this relates to success in as far as not success, but how to receive more in Gashmias and in Ruchnias.
Sure.
So you have to expand yourself. That means self-growth. It means personal development. So one example I could give you with regards to expanding yourself as a kli, as a receptacle, would be in the realms of giving tzedakah. So we know it's a mitzvah to give 10%, I think is the magic number, of your salary or your income to tzedakah. So for somebody who has a regular job, gets his salary, brings in £2,000 a month net. I'm not a tax specialist, but let's call that's what's in his bank account after he's paid his taxes is £2,000. There is an expectation or a mitzvah to give £200 of that to tzedakah. We call it Isa. Yeah. Doing that doesn't expand yourself as a vessel. There are times when you hear people say, if I won the lottery, I would give £1 million to tzedakah. That also, it's good, it's very nice, beautiful, but I want to try to clarify what it means to expand yourself as a vessel. That means to grow and to bring down more shefa than your, in this example, more than the £2,000 a month, giving more than the 200. By saying that, should I win the lottery, I will give £1 million to tzedakah, doesn't expand yourself. What you first have to do is, with your existing £200, increase that to 205. By doing that, that expands your vessel to enable to receive more. First, you have to then show Hashem, look, you have to give him the confidence to give you more. So Hashem gives two guys, Shimon and Levi, £1,000 each. Shimon, he does his weekly shop, he pays the mortgage, all his bills are paid for, he's left with £100. And with that £100, he goes to the supermarket and he buys himself a beautiful bottle of single malt. Enjoys it. Levi does the same, pays all his bills, he's left with £100. Levi then takes that £100 and he gives it to tzedakah. Now the following week, Kadosh Baruch Hu has another £2,000 to divvy out. What does he do? He gives Levi £1,100 and he gives Shimon £900. This is concept that I'm talking about when it comes to expanding the vessel. Levi expanded his vessel. He created a bigger kli to receive more. He didn't say, I'm going to wait till my next business deal to come to fruition and I'm going to give another £100. He did that. Does that help to clarify?
So saying going into work with that mindset, or trying to go through one's life, forget work, but somebody's just going through his life thinking, how can I do something today beyond my immediate zone of comfort, beyond my immediate zone of security?
You have to push yourself out of your comfort zone. No doubt. I was told that the opposite to happiness is comfort. Something to ponder on. I don't want to lose my thread because I'm very easily distracted, but for all the listeners out there, the opposite of happiness is comfort. Something to think on.
Wow.
There's another way to expand the vessel. There are many people who say that once I have enough financial security, I'm going to learn. Once again, it has to be the other way around. First, you have to find time to learn Torah. I was in Gateshead last Sunday for a Yemei Limud. It was an opportunity. I'm not an alumni, as it's probably evident from this podcast, but I do have a son learning there, and I was invited by him. He wanted me to come and learn with him for the day, and I got to have lunch with the Rosh Hashiva. There was Q&A, And one of the questions that was posed to him was, it wasn't by myself, their question was, I am somebody who has Kanai Nahara, a large family, I have a business to run, I'm involved with different charitable organizations, I've got many genuine pressures. How do I organize my life in the right way? Family, children, work, learning, Yiddishkeit, so on and so forth. The Rosh Hashiva's response was, the first thing you need to do is have a kvias, is that the right word?
Yeah.
Kvias in learning. Doesn't matter how big that is, 10 minutes, 50, and during that time, absolutely nothing can disturb you. You cannot be distracted. That comes, during that time, there's nothing else. And the other thing that he said was to have a fixed place for davening. He said that if you have those two, everything else will fall into place. Going back to expanding the vessel, you have to find time. You need to not say, well, once I'm financially secure that I'm going to find time for learning, even if it's 15 minutes, 10 minutes. I had a friend, it's kind of fallen by the wayside, but he used to call me every day to learn one halacha from the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. That was it. That was he called me. It would take a couple of minutes. That was once a day, if we could. He'd call me, and even that gets you off the ground.
So the concept of putting it into your schedule first, and then letting everything else be shaped around that.
Correct. It has to be that your Yiddishkeit is priority, and everything else fits in and around that. There is from what I understand, a very famous kollel in Manhattan that was established by some very, very wealthy Persian Jews, where they decided they were going to learn for an hour in the morning before they went to work. They learned for an hour before they went to work, and they found that actually they ended up making more money than before they started this program. So they decided, after a period of time, they were going to push that to 2 hours. Eventually, after making more money than they had ever earned before, they pushed that to 3 hours. They now learn, these guys, and we're talking guys who potentially, if not hundreds of millions, potentially even in the billions, they're learning for 3 hours before they go to work in the morning. This is a way to expand the kli. By doing these things, you are able to receive more. Because you are developing yourself as a vessel. In order to receive more, you have to be able to. If you are a shot glass, you need to make yourself into a tumbler. If you're a tumbler, you need to make yourself into a pint glass.
That becomes the journey.
So if you want to receive more, you want to become more. And I don't like to use this word, more successful. You want to bring down more shefa. You need to develop yourself as a keli and increase the size of your keli. There is other ways to grow yourself as a keli. I'd just like to before we talk about. This is all interrelated. Elevating the material, elevating the gashmias. So, for example, you really want a new car. So if you have your existing car and you use that, for example, to go to shul in, or you use it to take Bubba or Zayda to the supermarket, or you use it as a vehicle for doing mitzvahs, that's elevating the gashmias into ruchnias. So you can then say to Hashem, look, Hashem, I really would love a new car. Look what I'm doing with my car now. And if you use that and sanctify the car for doing positive things, then this is how to bring down more and another way. So having the kavanah that you're asking Hashem, please give me more, and with that I will do your will with what you give me. It's a way, it's a mechanism to bring down more. So Hashem, please give me more, so to use it for good things. Hopefully that doesn't contradict the idea of I'm going to once I win the lottery, I'm going to give tzedakah. It's not
right. Yeah, I understand.
It's not in contradiction to that. In line with that, there is an idea called alignment with God, aligning yourself with God. So you've got alignment versus ambition. Okay, alignment is making Hashem's will your will. Ambition is all about the ego. It's self-centered. And alignment is God-focused. Ambition is self-centered. Alignment is God-centric. So if you're ambitious, what does that mean? It means I want to achieve for me. Yeah. Alignment means that let's say you want to open an organization, a charitable organization. You want to do God's will. You want to bring down more of the Shekhinah, spread God's light. You want to do kindness to others. So by aligning with what God wants, He can then send more down through you, as opposed to being ambitious. I want more for me because it will benefit me. Yeah, it's quite subtle, I think.
Subtle, but I assume the stress test would be when things don't go the way you want them. How does one react? And I suppose the outgrowth of that would reflect back as to whether it was alignment or ambition. If somebody launches a charity organization and then somebody else launches competition to their charity organization, if you get flustered and frustrated or upset and jealous, then it's probably ambition versus alignment. Is that fair to say?
I never thought about it like that. Could be. I was thinking more along the lines of, I want to have big house, big car, nice holidays, and be successful because of how it will make me look, as opposed to opening this charitable organization in order to do good and to be able to give the tzedakah, to be able to do, to have. To open your home up to be able to have people around for, to host, have a nice home in order that you can use that home to host shirim, to have people that need Shabbos meals. That's really what how I see alignment versus ambition. So if your ambition is to have a big house, because you want to have the grandeur of coming into the, as opposed to I want to have a big house so I can home more children and host people that need hosting. That to me is ambition versus alignment.
Right.
Another way to expand the vessel, to bring more down, bring more shefa, is understanding that a man's wife is the source of his parnasa. It's the source of parnasa and bracha. This is something that is brought down explicitly in the Torah, mefurish in the Pesukim in the Torah. It's brought down in the Gemara, and it's brought down in Kabbalistic teachings as well. It says in Bava Metzia, blessing is found in a man's home only because of his wife. Why is that? Because the wife often sacrifices so much materially in order that the home can function. She turns raw income into life, warmth, and continuity. And Hashem responds, measure for measure, midah keneged midah. Honoring the source of the blessing increases the blessing. That is why Chazal emphasize respect, emotional care, and dignity, and not domination and control. In the Torah, we see Abraham was wealthy only because of Sarah Imenu. The Pasuk reads, and he treated Avram well because of her. A man can earn money, but whether it carries bracha depends on the spiritual state of the home. And the wife determines and shapes the spirituality of the home. Kabbalistically, man represents hishtadlus, effort, and woman, she represents Kabbalah, receptivity and blessing. Blessing flows from heaven downward, and the wife is the kli. She's the receptacle that allows that flow to become tangible, brings it into existence. Without a proper vessel, blessing does not settle. In Kabbalistic terms, it says that honor, covered, opens the channel between the masculine, the giver, and the feminine, the receiver. When a man honors his wife, when he honors her emotionally, verbally, and materially, he aligns himself with divine harmony. When that alignment is in place, shefa, divine abundance can flow freely into the home. But these are all concepts that to contemplate. I can't open these up. These are for all those listeners out there. Please don't pick my brains on these. These are things that I in my own way I understand and try to live with. But I can't open it up.
Right.
If you got any questions,
powerful
but
fundamentals
just something to really think on.
Yeah.
There's also something else that I wanted to talk about, and that is the idea that which you chase runs away from you. If you chase money, it will run from you. There's also one's relationship to money, how people relate to money. If you have an unhealthy relationship towards money, you will not. It's having a good relationship towards money is a way of expanding the vessel. Me personally, when I was 12 years old, my father was on the board of directors of a successful company. We were comfortable. He had nice cars. We went on nice holidays. We wore nice clothes. Then one day, the owner of the company died, leaving the company to his son. Father and son, they didn't get along well, and the son had never worked in the company before. His son didn't know what to do, so he ended up breaking the company up and selling off all its assets in order for him to make millions of pounds, because the company had many assets that were very valuable, and it left my father unemployed at the time. He then decided to go into business for himself. He put all his savings into the business. He invested everything he had into the business. It didn't end up well, and the business ended up closing down, and financially he never recovered. As a 12-year-old boy on the brink of being a teenager, this left me with an indelible stain with regards to my relationship with money and feeling financially unstable. It left me feeling that whatever you had, it can be taken away in an instant. Now, there are pros and cons to this situation. In Yiddishkeit, we're actually supposed to live with this idea that anything that you have can be taken away in an instant. What that does is it enables you to be humble. It humbles you. Knowing that what you have can be taken away in an instant, it humbles you. So that's on the positive side. It is humbling. You get to understand that what you have is not really yours. If you have wealth, you have been chosen to be the guardian of that wealth. It's not really yours. The downside is it can really affect your emunah and bitachon. And it gave me a bad relationship with money. It left me with this feeling that whatever I had was never enough to give me financial security. Something very difficult to live with, and affected my relationship with money. Money became too much it's taking too much headspace, thinking about money too much of the time. That is a bad attitude towards money, and it gives you a bad relationship with money. That is a seriously difficult avoider to overcome. And believe me, it's still a daily challenge, but slowly, the story of my life, you get there. Well, it's not about getting there. It's actually about it's the process. It's the journey. So yeah, it's a hard one for me. However, once you can navigate and get, it's an avoider. And once you get into it, and you can start once I start to begin the process of remedying that situation, and my relationship to money started to change. I stopped having to worry about how much I was spending. Have I got enough? Being too careful with my money. Checking. Once I started to free up that, and I'm not saying I'm not careless with the money, but not worrying about it so much. That brought with it bracha and hatzlacha. It's just another way of change your relationship towards money. Is a way of expanding the receptacle in order to receive more. There are people who, you have to be careful what you want in life, because ultimately I think that Kadosh Baruch Hu does give those what they really want. And if I have seen people who all they want in life is money, and they get it, but it comes at a cost. Most people would probably they wouldn't want the cost that comes with that.
It's a complete paradigm shift as to what we're working for and how to go about it. We're not working for that end goal. It's not about the zeros at the end of the account. It's about what can be accomplished. I suppose that goes back to the title of this podcast, Getting High Trying, as in we know we want to achieve good, we want to do good, and as we try to work towards that goal, good will happen as a result, but not so much as about fighting for that specific outcome.
Yeah, and I think that actually brings us nicely on. 3 words. These are classic Gedalia-isms. Acceptance, bittle, surrender. I'd just maybe like to give the listeners a couple of seconds just to think about those 3 words. Acceptance, bittle, and surrender. When I was a child, I had a very, very good friend. He was adopted. His parents, until he came along, they weren't successful in having a child. Tried for many, many, many years, and they decided to adopt. Once they adopted him and he came into the home, his adopted mother, became pregnant, and she went on to have children of her own. This is something that is not unique to him. May he rest in peace. He's no longer with us, unfortunately. But I've heard numerous cases where people have tried for decades, and once they give up, once they accept, once they go into acceptance, once they surrender to their situation, everything changes, and the bracha comes down. And that's through this mechanism of acceptance, of surrendering, accepting your situation. When you fight it, you're fighting God's will. Once acceptance expands the keli in order to receive more, you accept your situation with a good heart, and it opens up Shemayim.
Wow.
Machloikas. Machloikas has got to be one of the biggest blockages to receiving. The Chofetz Chaim, he gives an example, a moshel, about 2 brothers sat at the dinner table together. One of the brothers reaches over to his brother and steals his plate from him. The brother whose plate was taken away has a decision to make. Does he go fighting with his brother to try and get his portion back? Or does he go to his father and explain what's happened? So in the Chofetz Chaim's Marshal, he says, goes to his father, and he says, Tati, my brother took away my portion. Where the father responds, don't worry, son, gives him something to eat, and sends them both away. At the next meal, he gives the boy who had his portion taken away a double portion, and the one who took his brother's portion, he gives him half. Now, had the brother who had his food taken away responded differently and got into a machloikas with his brother, fighting with him, bad-mouthing him, there would have been a completely different outcome. By avoiding machloikas, you expand the vessel. By acceptance, you expand the vessel. These are all things that help to bring down Shefa from Shemayim.
Fascinating.
There's a gentleman called Sidney Banks. He says that positivity is a spiritual quality. It's a divine gift, whereas negativity is a disease of the mind. Now, things like having a positive mental attitude, positive affirmations, trach gut vet sein gut, think good and it will be good, but even more than just thinking good. Say good, speak good, speak out those positive thoughts. You know, the world was created with words. We create worlds with words. We say something positive, and you are creating worlds with that positivity. You are bringing about a reality. This is something we see in Yiddishkeit a lot. You know, the power of tefillah, the power of learning Torah, These are all things that bring about a reality. You say positive things will happen. Somebody that has a negative mindset, the opposite will happen. Gratitude. Another way to build the vessel, to grow the vessel, to bring down more shefa. Possibly no better way. I mean, this fits in with the positivity. A positive mindset. Being grateful, being positive. Just think about you have a child. How much more do you want to give that child when they show gratitude for that which you have given them? The ungrateful child makes you want to not give them again. Look, we do continue to give, but when I know from my personal experience, I give to a child and one of my kids, and they're grateful, it makes me want to give them again and again. Same with Hashem. You show Hashem true gratitude, and he'll feel the same way. He'll be happy to give you again. You show genuine gratitude, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will be happy to give you again. Once again, creating an opening for to receive more. And just going on to, I touched on the comparison of children. Children bring bracha. There's a teaching that says that each child is born with bread in his mouth. This means that Hashem provides new parnasa when a new soul enters the world. For me personally, I've seen this in my own life. One of the brachas about being in business versus being an employee is that you really get to see the Yad Hashem on a daily basis. And I don't believe it's a coincidence that you can be working, you can be trying to create some a business deal, put something together, and there'll be many failures. The failures will always outnumber the successes. But I don't believe it's a coincidence that the success of a business deal has come in and around the time that one of my children is born. This is a really important thing to really take on, because I hear, especially in the secular world, the world that I came from, I can't afford to have any more children. Can't afford to have more children. Children bring bracha. They bring parnasa. There's something else I want to touch on. I think you like this one.
Go on. Liking all of this.
Associate yourself with successful people. Being around successful people brings you success. Now,
how does that work?
Okay, so this is not my idea. Right. This is something that's expressed through the Torah in many places. We see it explicitly and repeatedly in Jewish sources, and it's not framed as networking in a modern sense, but it is a spiritual and psychological reality. Who you associate with shapes your outcomes. In Pirkei Avot it says, "Let your house be wide open, and let the poor be members of your household." Who regularly enters your space influences your character and destiny. This is because a person is shaped by the people he attaches himself to. All these teachings are bringing you to the same thing. You spend time around quality people, successful people, it will rub off on you. It will rub off in a way that you'll emulate them, and we see this. Like I say, this is not something that it's not my chiddush. It says it explicitly here, as we've seen. Yeah. Associate with successful people; it will bring success your way. One question I had that relates to all this is, if on Rosh Hashanah it's determined how much I'm going to make for the following year, how does everything that I've just said stem with that? Yeah. So after doing a little bit of digging and introspection, just thinking about this idea, I came to one thought, and that is that I think this thought came from I think it's Rebbe Akiva's daughter on her wedding day, that her destiny was that she was going to die, there was going to be a snake that was going to bite her, and she was going to die. And on her wedding day, she gave some food to a pauper, a homeless person. While she was getting ready for her chasana, she took out a hairpin and she stabbed it in the wall to put it while she was going to prepare her for the big day. When she stabbed it into the wall as a place just to secure it, to hold it while she was doing her hair, she stabbed the snake and killed it. This act of kindness created a new destiny for her. When we do a mitzvah, when we do an act of kindness, we become a new person. We become a different person. And that new person, that has a new destiny. You do something kind, and all of a sudden you're a different. So that person whose destiny on Rosh Hashanah, you're now a different. So there's now a new destiny, a new destination for you. You can now receive something different. That is not what was ordained for you. It's not because it wasn't ordained. It's because you're not that person. You're now a new person with a new destiny. You change your mazel. You give tzedakah, you become a different person. Yeah.
Wow. More than I bargained for, Charles, with that. Phenomenal. There's so many ideas there to unpack. And I think, like you're saying, as a springboard to go and delve into those ideas further and really start to learn and educate ourselves. I think a lot of us are thrown into the workforce as just part of the journey of life without necessarily learning or studying or being given the tools as to what we're doing. What's this journey about? How we best go about it. But yourself, I mean, I was going to come to this, but you touched on it. Let's go into it a little bit. I'm very inspired every morning after I drop my kids off at school. I usually pull around the corner and I see you getting out of your car with your Sforim on your way into shul to get your morning fix. When did that start, and how did you manage to stay disciplined despite the other commitments that you've got going on?
So it started early on in my journey. I was learning to read Hebrew again from back in the days of Rabbi Volkin. I wanted to be able to read from a siddur. So I used to go to Rabbi Stanton, and I would go a couple of times a week in the morning. I think the only time that really worked for himself and myself in those days was in the morning. I think it was like 9:15 maybe till 10 o'clock, a couple of times a week. So I couldn't find the time that worked for it. And it's not easy finding somebody to learn with at that time of the day. Began there. Then I started to learn with somebody in the mornings, 9 o'clock. Not for long. We'd go through the parsha for 15 minutes, sometimes 30 minutes, between 9:15, 9:30. The person who I was learning with was then asked to give a Daf Yomi shir that began at 9:30 in the morning. And he convinced me to come. I mean, I'd learned some Gemara. Usually I had a weekly learning program that involved Gemara. That was the extent of my exposure to Gemara, learning once a week Gemara. I enjoyed learning with this person, and he convinced me to try it out. So after I dropped my kids in school, I had already a Seder in place to learn between 9 and 9:30 anyway. So I would go to in that base medrash. I would learn between 9 and 9:30, waiting because to start work at 9 o'clock till between 9 and 9:30 is impossible. I've tried it. The yates that gets you, and next thing you know, it's 9:45. You've got to brush to shir at 9:50. You've already missed. It just doesn't work. So you have to go straight from school drop off into learning. Then the shir was 9:30 till 10:30, and sometimes that would often go over till 9:35, 10:35, 10:40. Eventually, I managed to grow that and push myself to stay till 11 o'clock. An opportunity came up recently. Somebody's father approached me and asked would I learn with his son. His son was in yeshiva in America, and I think to do with having a visa. Right. He was no longer able to learn in America, so his father said, could I make time to learn with his son? His son's 20 years old, and I said, I've got a space between 10:30, 11 o'clock. And so that pushed me to learn, to continue learning till 11. I mean, I'm no longer doing Daf Yomi. I have a chavrusa from 9:30 till roughly 10:15, 10:30. At which point I then learn with this guy till 11. And that's my morning. It's just siyata d'shmaya, hashgacha pratis.
But to stay disciplined with that, you know that when you come into the office, you've got stuff to deal with, and surely it's pulling. But just to stay, your work day starts at 11 o'clock essentially.
Yes, but look, I'm a human being, and there's some days where there's there's not so much on my plate, and it's not such a difficult battle, and there are other days where my mind is everywhere other than the safer that I'm supposed to be in, because I'm human, and if there is something that's on my mind, some work that needs to be done, and I'm thinking I just can't wait to get out of here so I can just get stuck into the work that needs to be done. Yeah, that happens. I don't want to say how often it happens, but it happens. Ultimately, and that's the battleground. That's one of the many battlegrounds.
Fascinating, really inspiring to hear that. I mean, just hearing that you spend time now learning with teaching somebody else's son. I wanted to ask you, when you take a step back, if you do get a chance to do this occasionally, and I'm sure you do, to step back and just reflect on your own upbringing, like those early years at Balkan Cheder, then there was that gap of when you didn't have the exposure to Torah learning and learning how to learn, and now seeing your own children in yeshiva system, in going through yeshiva, learning and coming out the other side as mature young adults and everything they've established, and now you're in a position where you're teaching somebody else's son. Like, what does this do for you, taking a step back and just looking at that full horizon?
I suppose I'd need to take a step back and think about it. It's a motivator. It's a motivator to keep going. That's my knee-jerk response to that question. I'd probably need to sit with that for a little while to give you something more.
Come back for a part two.
No, but I would like to share just that I was in university for 5 years. I was in Newcastle upon Tyne, and I chose that university because it was a place that has a good social scene, a nightlife, and that's what I chose. That was the motivating factor to go to Newcastle upon Tyne. I heard it was a great place to go out and party. I spent 5 years there. I failed my first year. I resat it. I failed it again. The university asked me to leave the course. They wouldn't invite me back on. So they said if I want to remain in the university, I have to find another course and go through clearing. I changed course. I did my first year for a third time. And then that was a little bit of a wake-up call. And eventually I managed to finish my degree. I didn't do so well in my degree. I lost my honours. But that whole time those whole 5 years I was in Newcastle upon Tyne, I had no idea that 10 minutes down the road there was an establishment called Gateshead Yeshiva. I didn't know such a place existed. It was completely unbeknown to me. To now have a son in Gateshead and to go and visit, to go and visit and drive to the nostalgia, but also to consider the contrast between how I spent 5 years in Newcastle versus my son's. He's in his third year, probably do another year there. He'll similar amount of time. Just to think about my life, those 5 years I spent there, and his time in the Northeast, just is crazy.
And then to sit there together, like you said, that day in Gateshead a couple of weeks ago, just learning together, the same Gemara and the same Beis Medrash, it just must be an incredible moment of...
It was a kind of pinch myself moment for sure.
Wow. That's really special. Let's touch briefly on being charitable. I think you brought it up earlier as one of the ideas that you shared from Gedalia Fenster. But charitable both financially and with your time. It's not a secret. You give your time to the local schools. You're involved in organizations. What would you tell a young businessman or woman who feels like they have what to give, but they're not quite sure how to get involved or what to expect when they do? Like from the outside, it always looks glamorous. You're involved. Your name's here. You're there. You're involved. You're a mover. Not you. When we see people involved, there's this mover and shaker kind of mentality. But surely it can be complex and requires some navigational skills, to get through. It's not always what you expect, and it doesn't always pan out the way people plan. What have you learned along your journey of being charitable?
So it was what they call a baptism of fire. I moved from Whitefield to Prestwich, and when I moved to Prestwich, I had people knocking at my door asking for tzedakah, something I'd never experienced in my life. And I was like, my gosh, this person, they must be so needy. They've come knocking on my door. Whatever money I had in my wallet, I gave them everything, because I was just, gosh, what it must take to bring somebody to knock at it. And then as soon as I closed the door, within 10 seconds, another person came to my door, and I had no money to give them. I told them to wait there. I went to the cash machine, and I went to get some money. I brought back, and I brought them a significant amount of money, and then this happened. This was happening then on a nightly basis. I was getting people coming. I had no idea there was this. It was only after a while that it was brought to my attention that there's a driver that brings carloads, and once your name's out there, you're on a list. Yes. You're on the hit list. And I had no idea. And I had people from that moment on a daily basis, multiple times a day, 3, 4, 5 times a day. I was getting asked, these. It didn't, Meshalochim coming from Eretz Israel, and that was before even giving to any kind of institutional giving. I was just giving every single day, multiple times, and I had no idea. I had people, breaking down in tears, Meshalochim breaking down in tears in front. It really was, like I say, a baptism of fire. But what that allowed me to do was go from not giving tzedakah because I didn't know about tzedakah to giving every day, because these were people who were coming with so much sorrow. I'd never, until that point, I'd never experienced any real sorrow of my own. The truth is I hadn't. And I was hearing, I would give each mashulach like 10 minutes of my time, hearing. And that also helped with gratitude as well. So many perks to experiencing that. But it was a real eye opener, and the benefits it brought with it are obviously immeasurable. So with regards to giving of my time, so I felt there was a point that came in my life where I felt that I'd taken so much from the community, because everything that I am or was at that time when I came to this conclusion was, everyone had given me so much that, whether it was meals, Shabbos meals, whether it was wisdom, people, there were so many people there that were giving of themselves to me. I built I don't want to say I built myself up, but I'd received so much from the community. I felt that, I wanted to give something back, and I was looking. Once I came to that, an opportunity arose. I remember there was an advert in the Manchester Advertiser for Misaskim, looking for volunteers, and I knew one of the guys that were involved in the organisation. I approached him. I said I saw the advert. He took my name and number down, and he added me to it's a WhatsApp group. Really easy to be able to join. There's others. There's Chaverim. I think Hatzalah. There's various. But at that time, that's what came up. I made the decision that I wanted to give, and lo and behold, what a coincidence!
You created the vessel,
aka creating the vessel. Siyata D'Shmaya. The advert turns up in Advertiser, and that was a way for me to give of my time. That was my first real, I suppose, opportunity to give of my time, give of myself. I'll still do it today, not as much as I'd like to, but it's a great way, because you're on a WhatsApp group. You can, give as much or as little as you want. Sometimes I find myself multiple times a week, helping out with Misaskim, and also just to tie that in with elevating your, the Gashmias into Ruchmias. I take my car, I fill it with Sidurim, with a stender, with candle, everything that's needed for somebody to sit shiva. So I'm taking my car and I'm using it for a mitzvah. It's a great way, and if you can only do it once in a month, you can do it once in a month. You just respond, to the WhatsApp goes out, who's available to do this one. And unfortunately, there are not many days that go by without that WhatsApp pinging. with regards to being involved with other organizations. So Haderech, Rabbi Aviv Bar-Ilan, he asked me to be a trustee of Haderech. Then I owe a lot to Aviv. He was there right from the beginning. He was the person that really, he schlepped me by my bootlaces, I suppose. Is that the expression? Along this journey. He didn't really give me much choice in the beginning. He's very persistent and insistent, but he was a big part in who I am today.
That's fascinating. Let's jump into, we're going to come towards closing, but there's two things I want to discuss with you. Number one is exercise and keeping fit. Mm-hmm. One day, perhaps I'll do a full episode on the benefits, but I want to get to hear, I always get excited when I speak to a busy business owner, somebody who's busy with learning, busy with business, busy with charitable acts, and still they find time in their routine to take this seriously and have a committed exercise routine. Give us a brief rundown of what your routine looks like and what it does for your mental well-being.
First of all, I'd just like to say that as a child, I was very active. My parents sent me to Cubs, Scouts, that involved, being very outdoors, an outdoorsy lifestyle. There was canoeing, there was going, hiking. It was very, it was very active. They sent me to martial arts, to karate until I was, maybe, 9, 10 years old. Football was a big part of my life. I used to play a lot of football, even until I was probably in late 30s. I was playing football sometimes, at least minimum twice a week, even as a married man with children. I made time in the evenings. There was Sunday morning. The game was in between dropping kids off at school and collecting them. So that was the Sunday morning. And there was a weekday evening game. As I started to age and my body couldn't take the abuse I was giving it in the football matches, I took some time out, and exercise was not a part of my regime for a number of years. Before I was married, I was playing squash. I was in the gym 3 times a week, swimming a bit. So I have had the benefit of being active from an early age. I don't know how somebody goes from not being active to being active, but for me, it has been a part of my life from being a small child. So I did miss it, and even the times when I've not made time for exercise, I've always felt that I need to, or want to get back into it. Really, the gym, I've never really liked the gym. I don't like working out. I like playing sport. I am competitive by nature. I like playing either team sports, individual sports, whether it be tennis, squash, football. But as I started to age and my body started to go into decline and started to feel the aches and pains, I was brought to the understanding that a person's body, once they get to a certain age, I think whether it's maybe from around 30 years old, the body starts to decline physically, approximately like 1% per day.
Wow.
One of the biggest issues, I think, is muscle. When the muscle starts to get weaker, and if it's just left to its own device, eventually, once someone becomes geriatric, that's often a cause of death. And as far as that, they fall over, they break their hips, and end up, unfortunately. This is derech hateva. I don't want to go too much into it, but just as far as, so therefore, and I felt it in myself. I felt going up the stairs, I would get to the top of the stairs and I was out of breath. Something that I wasn't used to. I didn't like it, and that was a motivator. My oldest child at the moment is 19. My youngest is 7, and when I was fitter than I am now, keeping up with them, playing with them, chasing after them, playing football in the garden with them, I was always able to not only compete, but show them that I still got it. Yeah. Once my kids started to get the upper hand on me, and they were stronger than me and faster than me, I then realized that with my younger children, something has to change to be able to give them the best of me, like I gave my older kids. And so, just with all that, those were all the motivators. Right. I felt it in my body. I still feel it in my body, the aches and the pains that I never used to have. And I realized that ultimately that I want to go into old age, as strong and well, as I possibly can. So that really is a massive motivator, and you have to make time if it is hard for you. So, and it is genuinely hard for me to exercise. I don't really enjoy it once it's over and I've done it. Because exercise releases endorphins. Endorphins make you feel good. So another Gedalia will tell you that life is tough. Living in Manchester is tough. Manchester, if we look out the window now, it's grey. It's grey all day long, day in, day out. We get very little respite from this dull, grey, wet, and it's easy to bring a person down. Life's not easy. And he always makes a reference to, you've got there's an easy way. It's a cheap and easy way to lift your mood. He talks about the cold plunge. I've not done the cold plunge, but he says the endorphins that are released from the cold plunge are incredible. It's just an easy way to raise your mood, even just one notch. I've just started in the past few weeks finishing off my shower with a cold shower, bringing it right down to the coldest temperature that it can go. I'm pushing to last 30 seconds, and it's invigorating. It's genuinely invigorating.
Mentally, is that because you're pushing yourself to do something that you're really uncomfortable doing, and then that empowers you to get past stuff later on? Taking yourself out of your comfort zone is helpful, to say the least, and empowering. Coping and dealing with that discomfort. Most people, I think, do what they can to avoid pain and discomfort. They will avoid situations that make them feel uncomfortable. By doing these things, it helps you to navigate life and to deal with you can apply when I'm in that shower and the room's spinning out and I'm freezing and my head is like, it's got this icy water dripping down me, and it is physically and mentally very, very difficult for me to endure that. I find it extremely hard, and overcoming that is allowing me to face other things. I suppose it ties back to what you said earlier, that the opposite of happiness is comfort.
Mm-hmm.
So
Sure.
if one is looking for happiness, then letting go of that comfort for a bit can really exercise that muscle.
Yeah. But just on a physical level, like I say, that raising your spirits, the two really easy ways. Well, no. Having the cold shower is not easy. The cold shower is not easy, but it's easy in as far as you can just turn the tap and stand under it.
Right.
From that perspective, it's easy. You just need a shower, you stand under it, and it does genuinely invigorate you, and you feel good for it. When you step out and you come to and you dry off, you feel great. You feel invigorated. From the exercise, getting yourself onto whatever apparatus that you decide to use. I like to go on the spin bike and some weights. I have to push myself on there, push myself out of my comfort zone. I don't want to do it, but I get it done. And what's left over from that is the endorphin release, raising your mood, feeling like you've achieved something. It just, even if that can raise your mood by one notch, it's worth it.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Charles, it's been amazing talking to you. You've shared so many insights, so many different angles and perspectives. Let's close this off with one brief message to a young businessman, businesswoman who might feel bogged down by just the constant exposure to other people's successes, to the constant pull of social media, of LinkedIn, to constantly being pulled towards things that are not helping them be productive, not helping them get to where they really want to be and where they know they need to be. How can we learn to emulate some of the things and the ideas that you've shared along your journey to avoid being pulled away from that core objective?
Looking at other people, seeing what other people have, what other people are doing is, I feel, so destructive. it's the opposite of everything that we've been discussing. You know, you
counterproductive.
Yeah, don't look at other people. In Gashmias, look at other people. Look at those people who are greater than you in Gashmias. Aspire. Sorry.
Caught you there. I'm listening.
Aspire. Look at those people who are greater than you in Ruchnias, not Gashmias. In Gashmias, look at those people who have less than you. It brings you to gratitude. Look at those people who are greater than you in Ruchnias, and it inspires you to do more, to be more. If you're going to look at other people, that's the way to do it.
Fantastic. Charles, I cannot thank you enough. I really appreciate it. I know this was probably one of those exercises that was out of the immediate comfort zone, but you've prepared and you've come and you've shared such beautiful ideas, which I'm sure are going to help and inspire many, many listeners. And I cannot thank you enough.
Pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity.
Wishing you continued success. Thank you.
Thank you.